Welcome to Cultural Luminaries, episode 1. I'm delighted to welcome you to the show today. This LinkedIn Live series brings together trailblazers who light the way in leadership, cultural innovation, and emotional well-being. Today's first episode is personal. I'm delighted to invite my partner of 24 years to the stage today. Tushar Patel, you are spend today's stream really digging into some of the behind the scenes of who's shaped me, so significantly as a leader in my own journey. So just thank you for being here and for making the time to chat with me today. And Tushar, I thought it was really
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
spend today's stream. Yes. So please, for the benefit of our audience who might not know who you are, please go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience.
Hey, everybody. I am Tushar Patel. I personally, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a brother, I'm a son. I'm an ally to people without a voice. I love art, nature, and I like using my hands to make things. Professionally, I practice facilities management, operations management. I've been an owner's rep for construction and development projects. And I've worked with a lot of the big companies in the area, and I enjoy doing what I do. Um, this summer, I have taken some time off for some self care and some discovery. So I've been doing some new things, grounding myself, and launching a new idea that I have. So we'll get to that a bit later.
Love it. So, one of the questions I ask all of my guests on this show is what lights you up? This show is called Cultural Luminaries, and a big part of how we must navigate the world today as leaders is understanding what lights us up, what fills our cup. So, tell me, Tushar, what lights you up?
Seeing my family lights me up, for sure. But color lights me up. Vivid colors, the colors of nature. Music, I love all different types of music depending on the mood I'm in or the scenario that I'm in. Different types of music lights me up. Texture, I really like textures, fabrics. As I mentioned, I like to work with my hands, so when I can touch something and feel the texture, it kind of excites my senses. Um, as well as smells and flavors. We're Indian. We grew up in an Indian household, you and I, and you know, lots of flavors and scents related to cooking and the aromas and stuff. So that always lights me up, especially these days. When I smell Indian food, particularly, it reminds me of my childhood. So that definitely lights me up.
I love it. I think you hit every single one of the five senses there, and that definitely lines up with what I know about you. so, so now that we know what lights you up, this show, this series is really intended to kind of get past the surface level, you know, past the surface level things that we usually talk about in this kind of context and really get to know each other as people. And that's why I invited you to join me today, because you know me and I know you better than anyone in the whole world. And we the two, for the sake of our audience who might not know about us, let me just give a little bit of our history to those who are joining us, so they know some context for who you are. So the two of us met in the year 2000. I was 18, you were 21, and we have been together for 24 years. And I will say that during that time, we were kids when we met. We were basically just in college. We were just starting out our lives, and the two of us connected over music. And it's interesting that music has been this thread for us this whole time. But we lived in Florida for 5 years, which is where we met at a mutual friend's birthday party. And the two of us moved to Seattle together in 2005 because I got my dream job at testing airplanes at Boeing, and you, bless your heart, moved out here with me, where we've lived in Seattle for coming up on 20 years. And so, in that 20 years, you've seen me completely change as a human. The biggest, I would say, evolution point in my journey, that is something I talk about in my book and something I talk about on this show as well, is in 2018 when I decided to leave my corporate job to start my own consultancy because my health was really suffering. At the time, I was at a very low point, had a lot of chronic pain in my neck and shoulders. And that was when my kind of journey of self discovery, of prioritizing my own health and well being, of understanding how I was stuck in chronic states of stress and how that was really impacting my health. That was when that journey really started for me. And I know that for you, as my partner of 24 years, that was a big change for you as well, because you started to see me completely shift my life priorities. I changed my job. I started changing my habits. I started changing how I was communicating. So much was changing, and I want to hear your perspective on what was that like for you. Like, what would tell me your perspective on how, when I started to change more as a human, how did that impact you, and what did you see through that?
Yeah. Wow. We've been together 24 years, more time together than not together. Um, so in that time, we've done a lot of growing. I've done a lot of growing up, um, and I've seen you grow up, and perspectives have changed, uh, expectations have changed, priorities and values have even shifted. And the thing that I recall, kind of the most important thing in that moment of time, we moved out here. You had your dream job. You were going to be an executive, but you were climbing that corporate ladder at Boeing, doing the thing that you love to do, and at the same time, your body wasn't supporting, the type of work-life balance you had, the work style, the work type you had, being remote for a long period of time. All that stuff affected your body, and then you had to focus on that. And so that was a really dramatic change. I was with you the entire time. I witnessed, you just being in pain, and that pretty much becoming the chronic issue of our life. And I recall saying something like, "Well, why don't you just quit your job?" And at some point, that was the best thing to do. You decided to do that. You had to really put that away and focus on your body. Um, and I didn't get it fully at the time because uh, you know, growing up in an Indian household, first generation, parents don't have degrees. We have degrees, advanced degrees. We have these professional jobs, and here we are hitting the brakes, and focusing on our body, something our parents have never done. And so, seeing you do that, first of all, I was proud. I was happy. Our my career, approach had to change, because yours was changing, and so there was a lot happening at the time. And I just recall, really kind of, it was in support the whole time, and I was just, it's like, wow, what does it take to do this, right? I haven't been through that myself, and not at that time, and I didn't get it. But I'm so glad you did it for yourself, because here you are, you're doing just something just as big, even bigger, and you're happier. Your body is happy. You're strong, and so. you know, that influenced my perspective. Um, Maybe there was a 10-year delay for me on receiving that and really taking that to heart and exercising it for myself. But this summer, I'm I'm following in your footsteps a bit and taking time to understand myself and take time for myself. And there's a big cost to all of this. There's a big financial cost. It stops our careers, but you've done it. You've bounced back. I've had to pause my career. I've bounced back every single time. And so I'm proud of you for doing it. And I encourage anybody who questions whether they're in the right space, in the right zone, um, to really question what their priorities are and determine if that's aligned with what they need.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. And I think a lot of people who I'm talking to in the work context, as well as friends and family, a lot of the conversations I'm having with people are centered around how just chronically stressed people are. Like, as an emotional intelligence educator, I'm really getting to see a lot of behind the scenes on how much people are struggling right now just to stay afloat. If we think about what's happening in our country, in our world, in our workplaces, there's a lot of change happening and a lot of stress. And the biggest thing for me is, and I'm so grateful that I was fortunate and privileged enough to be able to step back and prioritize my health. But when I walked away from my dream job, it was it was a huge thing. But I ultimately, the reason I did it was I looked into the future and I was like, is it worth it? Is it worth it to have the title, the job, the salary, if I don't have my health? Like, if I feel bad. And now what I understand is that in retrospect, I would go into conference rooms, I'd go into boardrooms, I'd be sitting around a table with executives, with decision makers, and I couldn't disagree with people. Like, what I found and what I knew was that I would go into kind of a fight, flight, or freeze state anytime I was taking a big risk at work. And work was great when I was, agreeing with people. And as a woman, as an Indian woman, we're taught very much to be agreeable. But the moment that I wanted to disagree, not only was it difficult for me, but it was difficult for the people around me because they were not used to me disagreeing. And I think culturally there's a lot of expectations on women to be agreeable. And so that, when I left and when I started prioritizing my health, I learned how to communicate better, because one of the things that happened is I settled down my nervous system from being chronically stressed, and I was able to stay more present. And I know that that influenced you, Tashar, because, for the sake of our listeners who are tuned in today, you know, how do we learn how to navigate conflict? How do we learn how to navigate conversations that are difficult? And this is a really important topic because a lot of us avoid topics and conversations that are difficult at work, at home, politically, across the spectrum. And one thing I believe, like in my heart of hearts, is that if we lean into those conversations that are challenging and we build the practice that we need to not be scared to say what we want to say, and on the other side, like, if somebody is disagreeing with us or saying something that we might not agree with or we find hard to hear, how can we calm ourselves down enough to listen? And so I think that that's something that we've practiced in our relationship, is learning how to stay more present to each other and how to regulate our emotions and our bodies so that we can communicate. And I'm really grateful that I think about when we were young, when we were in our early 20s, we didn't know how to disagree. Like, we would have pretty pretty explosive disagreements that we never really learned how to resolve, and that was because we didn't have good role models for communication and conflict. Who does? I think it's very rare for people to have that. Um, but we learned, and we've been teaching, and are still teaching ourselves how to um, stay present with each other and navigate conversations so that we can really hear each other and respect each other, even when we disagree.
Yeah. Um, most of this was led by you. And I have you to thank, because we, like you said, we grow up, with, we inherit what our parents give us, and what the community around us does, and the friends we have, so that all influences who we are. And for me, my role models were short tempered. They were to the point, and but they were also great people. And so I thought, well, wow, that's something I want to be. I just want to be just like those role models I have. And so, um, I realized, as we grew up together, that isn't how, um, to respectfully communicate. And you know, seeing, the response, see, c- feeling one way and then communicating to you or to your partner, and then receiving an outcome that isn't what you intended on, kind of makes you wonder how you're communicating. And so I found myself quite often saying stuff that, would yield a response back that I thought, wow, I didn't mean to. I don't know what I just said to. Maybe I'm not communicating correctly. And so I found myself, learning through just the mirror which you put up in front of me, which was, you would just question. You would just be like, what do you mean? Why? And so as we grew up together, I would learn to pause more, and just try to understand what just came out of my mouth. And I think building that practice of awareness and being present in communication, and being able to just step outside of your body, slow down time, and understand what you're saying, and whether that's the best thing, or whether that's going to yield the results you want. I found myself doing that kind of on the fly, um, as you just became more direct and present with yourself. So, you know, um, teaching teaching ourselves is something that has to continue. Listening to feedback, and questioning the role models you have, and whether all of those qualities um, that those folks have, are ones to be embodied for yourself. And for me, I learned, I needed to take the good things, and not the bad, and really, practice being a better partner through communication. And not only did that help with our partnership, but that effectively helped me with all of my relationships outside of, personal life,
How?
work.
I'm curious.
You know, I I would get excited. For an example, the boardroom situation. We sit in these boardrooms, and we're around people with a lot more power, and all of a sudden, your blood pressure is already up 10, 20 points or whatever that is.
Hmm.
And so now you have to regulate that. And now somebody says something inappropriate, and that kicks off an automatic response internally. Now I have to manage that before I even say anything. I even have to manage the expressions on my face. So having this sort of, um, out of body experience, and that's what I call it. But it's really just trying to observe myself in the moment, and course correcting, um, as I'm speaking. And I found myself, slowing down the time for myself to understand what's going on, how am I thinking, why am I doing it this way, and why
Breathing.
not do it better, differently. Yeah, and then I also found myself influencing the people around me. I would slow down this conversation and really give people time to breathe. Everyone's nervous systems would kind of slow down, and people's ears would open up and they would hear, what I had to say. So rather than communicate from a place of excitement or more of a reaction, I found myself trying to ground myself a lot more and faster before before I had a response, because there's what your body reacts to, and then there's what needs to come out of your mouth. And I think I was able to connect that a little bit better, um, of course, over a long period of time. But that's how it's affected, my time in the workplace, because I can really understand emotions might be coming across from other people. They might be having a bad day, whatever it is. I have to not take things so literally sometimes, and just kind of mirror back what I think I heard.
Yeah.
And that oftentimes gets people to question what they just said.
Yeah, it's you're slowing down the pace of conversation enough to make sure that people are really understanding each other and connecting. And I just want to like reflect back what you just said for the sake of our audience who are listening in today, because this is not rocket science like what we're talking about. These are things we talk about as like leadership lessons all the time. Like, slow down, take a pause, um, mirror back what you're hearing. But it's so much easier said than done. And I think it's one of these things that we talk about a lot. We talk about the importance of it a lot, but are we actually practicing it? And what I think it was really standing out from our story, as partners of 24 years, is that what we were able to do at home is slow down the pace of how we were operating at home. Like, I think about what our home used to be like 10 years ago. It was crazy. It was chaos. I would think that we were running around and trying to do more than we were actually capable of doing. And you know we have two kids together, and this is kind of what I want to segue into next as well. Like, our kids are now 8 and 11 years old, and I think about when they were really little, like preschool age. Many new parents or parents on the call today are listening in probably relate to this. Like, having kids raises your stress levels by like 1,000%. Even if it's kind of like a test of how do you react when you're all of a sudden facing a lot more challenging situations than you used to be. And it kind of reminds me of like when collectively we went through COVID together. All of a sudden our stress levels went up, or like this election that we just kind of lived through over the past week. Stress levels have gone up. There's a lot of things and situations where it feels like we're in a bit of a pressure cooker. And so what I'm really grateful for is that we were able to say, you know what, the world is getting hotter, but here in this home, here in these four walls, we're going to kind of slow things down. We're going to calm things down. And what I'm hearing you say, Tushar, is that you were able to take some of those things that were happening at home and translate those new skills, those practices into the boardroom, into your workplace. And I just think that's really cool. And so the next question I have for you is about being a dad. And so, you're the dad to two amazing young women, young ladies. And a lot of the things that we've been talking about, unlearning from Indian culture, from Asian culture, about just obeying authority, not questioning authority, doing what you're told, getting on with it. These are some of the same norms that we see in our workplaces. Obey authority, follow the chain of command, do what you're told. But I think a lot of us are feeling more and more like, why should we obey authority if authority is not making sense? And how do we respectfully challenge authority and push back? And I know that this is something I see you practicing with our kids. And so, talk to me about how you, as somebody who grew up in a house where authority rules, right? Like, you obey authority at all costs. Like, what has it been like for you being a dad to two powerful young women, young ladies? How do you encourage them to challenge your authority, and what have you had to unlearn, and how have you navigated that? Like, talk to me about that.
Oh man, this is a big one. So Indian household, dad was very direct. And Indian households, Asian households, a lot of immigrant households, you got to be very well behaved because you're going to get in trouble if you go out there in the world. This is, a second country to us and that sort of thing. That's the perspective our parents had. And so, shut up and get on with it, obey, and get on with it. Those words that you said, that was really much what I did. Just be quiet and get on with it. Don't challenge authority. And it really wasn't until, you know, uh, my 40s that I realized I should have challenged authority a bit more. Because it wasn't always, it was kind of one-sided. And so what I'm practicing with our children, and kind of going back to what I learned from you a little bit, at some point in the last 10 years or so, after we had our two daughters, you said something like, do you know, and I'm just going to paraphrase, you said something like, do you know how difficult it is for just a female just to leave the house? And then you listed all of these things, that you have to do just before you leave the house. And you said that's what our daughters are going to have to live with. And boom, that just kind of created this, like, this kind of reaction, this chemical reaction in my brain that said, um, you got to build strong females. You got to build up women, and you got to. I realized for us, we needed to do that right from the beginning with our daughters. Um, how do I do that? I do the opposite of obey and get on with it. Although sometimes I do say not those words, but something like that. At the end of the day, I do want them to obey and get on with it. But what I want them to do is challenge me, and I really love it when they do. It's a very difficult approach to parenting because you're finding yourself always in an argument. But what this is doing, I believe, is I'm allowing our children to argue with me. I'm allowing them to win arguments. I'm letting them have a point of view. I'm letting them fight for it. And I'm standing down when they do. And when they make a great point, I congratulate them. I thank them for it. And listen, it's not because I'm trying to build children who are not going to respect authority. What I want them to do is challenge the man that's in their life. And I'm the man in their life. I'm the big, strong man, and I'm just going to represent all the other millions of men that they're going to have to face when they leave this door, our front door here. And so for me, I want them to practice arguing with me. I want them to practice their strength, practice their power, practice eye contact, um, practice their strength, and then I'm going to congratulate them for doing it. And then I'm going to remind them that when they need to leave this door here, not to forget their confidence that we've built up with them for them. So, that's what I'm trying to do, um, and it's working.
Hmm. Yeah, it really is. They're powerful children, and I think about what's possible for this next generation with some of the skills that they're learning that we didn't learn. Like, it gives me a lot of hope for the future working with young people, because I think there's a lot of lessons that our generation has learned painfully that we now get to talk to them about, and rectify and make those things right. And I think about the importance of, you know being playful. So we're very playful in our house. We have a lot of fun with each other. We make fun of each other. We tickle each other. We wrestle. And that I think leads to when we are getting serious and we are having a disagreement and it does get kind of real and we're entering conflict, that we know that we still have each other's backs. And I think that this is really what I want to see more of in the workplace, where so many of us are so tense at work about disagreeing, about arguing, about asserting ourselves, about saying, I think that's wrong and I think this should be happening in a different way. We have to practice those things at home so that we can do them at work. And I just know and trust that there's a lot of us that are learning and applying those lessons, not just at home, but also in the workplace as well. Um, so we are getting on with time, and so we're going to have to start wrapping things up soon. But I wanted to talk about my name. So I recently, actually, I've been wanting to do this for a few years. Reclaim my maiden name, my born name, Jani. And I know that this has been a big conversation we've had over the past few years. Talk to me about what that's been like for you, about seeing me reclaim my born name.
See, I'm practicing presence here. I'm breathing deeply, calming myself down. Um, I want to say this has been a point of um, some stress in our lives over the last 20 years or so. I remember that time during our honeymoon in Tahiti, our last day there. We were at the airport, and for some stupid reason, I said something like, "When are you going to take my last name?" And you were, we had already talked about this, and you just didn't want to have that conversation. You didn't understand what my point of view was, and I remember you said something like, "Why? Why is this so important to you?" And I just remember not knowing why, but I remember saying, you know, because, just because that's what we do. Um, and it wasn't until and that was a long time ago, right? That was 17 years ago or so. You told me recently that you wanted to change your name back to Jyoti Jani, and the interesting thing is I've always called you Jyoti Jani this whole time. When I talk, when I say your full name, I say Jyoti Jani. I don't say Jyoti Patel. Um, I'll tell you what I felt though. What I felt was, hell yeah, I like that you're reclaiming your name. I like that you were um, just becoming the individual that you are, the individual that I met. And um, when you when you told me you were changing your name back, I had these feelings, obviously, like any husband would. Um, why? Oh my gosh, did I do something wrong? Did are you distancing yourself and all of this? All these questions. Why? What did I do? And I made it about me. And I realized, as I reflected back on that moment on our honeymoon, it, it never was about me. Um, it was about you. And for me, I don't know why I needed you to have my last name other than tradition. For you, that's your individuality, that's your name, that's your personality, your identity. And so I had to realize what you were trying to achieve, what your goal was, and your goal was just to have your name back. And to be honest, I don't know why you needed to have my last name anyways, other than tradition. So yeah, I'm proud of you for having that conversation with me. It was uncomfortable. I had to think and come up with an outcome and a realization. And the reality is, I don't know why I needed you to have my last name other than tradition, and it makes me feel good. But whatever.
Yeah. Well, I think like a big part of like being a creative and being a culture creator and evolving as a human is understanding and recognizing what traditions do we follow just from habit, and do those traditions make sense to us? And for me, it was a tradition that didn't make sense. I didn't really identify with your name, and in a way felt like it wasn't me. And so a big part of my own journey um, to reclaim my own power, to reclaim my own voice, was reclaiming my name. And so I think that there's a lot of rules that we collectively as a society can start to challenge and push back on. And um, what we call ourselves is one way we can do that. So my cough is starting to get worse, so I'm going to start to wrap up our live stream. But Tushar, for the sake of our audience today, how do people stay in touch with you? Tell us a little bit more about ways to stay connected to your work.
Yeah, you go ahead and mute and cough your head off. I thank you for the opportunity. This was fun. I normally don't do these sorts of things, videos and stuff out there on social media, but this was a great opportunity for us to um, let our professional networks see who we are outside of work. And if you want to contact me, uh, connect with me through my LinkedIn page, and I'll reply back to you. I see that I've already gotten some responses, and I thank you very much. But also, I'm coming off of taking about 6 months off sabbatical to really gather my thoughts and step back before I step forward. And there's a little bit more progress I need to make personally here. But the other thing that's been kind of I needed to scratch was this itch of launching this idea that I had, which was this new business, this new concept of being a like an owner's rep for owners in the area who might or might not have a real estate program. They may have facilities, they may have buildings, it may be a lot of them, they may be leased or owned or just a single. Um, I am a strategic advisor, and I can support anything from facilities maintenance, facilities management, to construction, to lease abstracts and such. So, if you need help with that, reach out to me. I've just launched my business, and I'm looking forward to evolving that into the next chapter of my career. And thanks, Jyoti. I hope you're feeling better now.
Thank you. What?
You're on mute.
Oh, I am. Okay, yeah. Well, thank you. It's been a really, really real conversation. We've dug into a lot today, from how we met 24 years ago, how we've evolved from being so emotionally immature to who we are today, raising two kids together, launching our own businesses. I'm excited for your next chapter. You have so much depth and richness of experience in real estate and facilities, and I love that you're embarking on this chapter, and I'm so excited for how we as a couple will continue to grow and evolve through this next phase, because we've been through a lot, and a lot of people ask us, you know, what's your secret? Like, how have you managed to stay together for 24 years? And I think really it's just about that commitment. You know, we've been through our ups and downs, just like any couple has in their history. But I think what really comes down to it, to me, is just like we are committed to each other and committed to making this work. And the fact that we are so open to evolving and to listening to each other and being ready to be wrong. You know, I think we're so much better at admitting when we're wrong than we've ever been. And I know that we have a lot more creativity and possibility in our future, not only our future, but our children's future, because of our willingness to be uncomfortable, our willingness to break free from traditions, and our willingness to push back on authority or leaders that don't make sense to us, either directly or by going around them in the system. So our lessons are rich here from our conversation today. So, thank you to our listeners for being tuned in to our inaugural episode of Cultural Luminaries. I'd like to thank my guest, Tushar Patel, for the authentic conversation today. Please go ahead and follow him on LinkedIn if you enjoyed today's conversation. This is a new weekly series, so I will be back next week. Today we had some technical difficulties and started late. So now I've learned how to do things. Hopefully, we'll start on time next week. And my guest next week is Rebecca Bastian, a senior vice president at Glowforge, an incredible creative, former vice president of community and culture at Zillow. And she and I will be talking about the importance of engaging in corporate social responsibility, and some of the work that she's done in Zillow because I interviewed her for my upcoming book. So I'm super excited to host Rebecca next week. Please tune in for that. And with that, have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.
See everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks.